Ben, thank you very much indeed. And of course, we'll be hearing much more from Ben and the team in the course of the coming hours and days. Now, censors in Hong Kong have been given the power to vet films for national security breaches as a clampdown on dissent in the territory continues. A new order instructs censors to prevent and suppress acts seen as endangering national security and to uphold the territorial integrity of China. Well, let's get more now on this with Kerry Allen. Kerry's a China specialist at the BBC News Monitoring Service. And Kerry, does it seem to you that this new order represents a significant ratcheting up of censorship of Hong Kong's film industry?
Oh gosh, absolutely, yes. I mean, there have been a number of moves to really kind of self-censor Hong Kong in recent months. So there have been changes to the education sector. We saw last week with the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square protests in 1989 that people were not. Normally, you'll see thousands of people literally going outside of their homes and lighting candles. They're not going out anymore because they seem afraid that they might be in danger of they might be arrested under this national security law. And the film industry in Hong Kong is absolutely huge. It's also where a lot of foreign films come over to broadcast. They produce films within Hong Kong. Now, this new law under the what's known as the Film Censorship Ordinance, it basically means that scenes could be cut, and it could mean that films could be absolutely scrapped if they're not deemed to be in line with national security laws. So they might be seen to show things that Beijing's not happy with, what it deems, violating national security.
And this amorphous phrase, endangering national security, I mean, it could be used in many different ways, but are there fears that it could effectively signal the end of this creative industry in Hong Kong?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. I mean, in mainland China, you've got this already. You've got the case where foreign films, they've got full scenes cut or they're just scrapped, they're not available to see in the mainland. It's another way in which Hong Kong might become more in line with Beijing, that not only films that come over and are shown there are scrapped, but also films that are actually produced locally are not available to view, or that the final product is not what the director intended it to be.
Kerry, thank you very much for that. Well, to continue with this, I'm joined now by the film director, Anders Hammer. Now, Anders produced a short Oscar-nominated documentary film about the Hong Kong pro-democracy protest, Do Not Split. It was Oscar-nominated. And as you were yourself following the pro-democracy movement very closely to film it, what's your reaction to what we now hear about these moves to put new censorship on the film industry, the movie business in Hong Kong?
I'm really sad hearing about these new film rules, but unfortunately they are just in line with the development we have seen over the last 2 years. When we made the documentary, we were following how basic democratic rights were disappearing from Hong Kong. And unfortunately, that development has just continued until today with the announcement of these film rules. Earlier this year, we saw mass arrests, we saw activists and opposition politicians being charged under this new draconian national security law. The problem with this law is that it's obviously very strict, but at the same time, it's very vague. So it creates a lot of fear, but also a lot of uncertainty. So, this basically leads to self-censorship. For us, or for me as a foreign film director, I'm in a much easier place than local filmmakers in Hong Kong, which now can potentially face being put in prison for creating art and challenging unjust power systems.
But Anders, we're looking at some clips from your film Do Not Split. You finished, I think, filming in the summer of 2020. Let's be honest, do you think that the new law would make it impossible for you to go and do a follow-up film in Hong Kong, following, the same sorts of people, activists today?
It's not possible for the activists to go out in the street and protest like they could when we started filming this documentary. Unfortunately, it's just becoming more and more difficult to show any kind of dissent against the political leadership in Beijing. So I'm sure we could make this movie today, And unfortunately, it's very difficult to show and use any kind of freedom of expression and freedom of press in the situation in Hong Kong today, because democracy is basically disappearing.
Just a very quick thought, Anders. Are people in Hong Kong today able to see Do Not Split, or is that now becoming impossible too?
It's possible to watch it online. It's impossible to have any kind of public screening of the documentary today, but until today, people in Hong Kong have luckily been able to see it online, but not in mainland China.
All right, we have to end there. Anders, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks a lot.